As Lin Dong activated the power of the Devouring Ancestral Talisman, the spiritual energy that permeated the surrounding world began to rapidly converge toward him. Meanwhile, as Lin Dong began a large-scale absorption of the world's spiritual energy, the dozens of dragons, who had lost their ability to move due to the repelling effect of the ancestral talisman's imprint, encountered a new development. This change in circumstances caused Lin Dong's heart to tremble slightly. The 10 or so azure dragons rolling on the ground, after struggling for several breaths, made an unbelievable choice. They each exploded their bodies into clouds of blood mist. Boom, boom, boom. One azure dragon after another exploded in mid-air. The scene was undeniably gruesome. However, it was through this self-destructive act that all the dragons finally forced the ancestral talisman imprints buried within their bodies to be erased. The collective self-destruction of the more than 20 azure dragons caused the blood mist to spread throughout the entire dragon space. From a general perspective, the self-destruction of all the dragons signified that Lin Dong had passed the super trial. However, just as all the azure dragons exploded, filling the entire space with blood mist, Lin Dong, who was still in the process of absorbing the spiritual energy of the world using the devouring ancestral talisman, suddenly froze. He had a vague sense that the true calamity he was about to face had already arrived. It felt as if some terrifying presence was about to be born within this dragon space. Just as Lin Dong had anticipated, when the sky-high blood mist filled the entire space, an extraordinarily terrifying fluctuation quietly emerged. This terrifying aura did not arrive in the form of an entity descending, but rather felt as though it had always been present in this dragon space. Lin Dong had simply failed to detect it until now. It was the center of the web. All the dragons were not real beings, but merely projections on the surface of a web. The terrifying aura now present in the world clearly originated from the central control of this web. Is it finally going to reveal itself? Sensing the terrifying aura, Lin Dong muttered to himself. He stopped absorbing the spiritual energy of the world. Although he had regained less than 1% of his strength, continuing to absorb spiritual energy was becoming increasingly difficult. The blood mist that was now filling the heavens and earth, like him, was also competing for the spiritual energy of this realm. Whoosh! As Lin Dong's mutter fell, the blood mist, which had spread throughout the world, surged like a storm. Under Lin Dong's gaze, the blood mist began to gather fiercely toward a specific point in the space, like a massive torrent. Following the direction of the blood mist's flow, Lin Dong focused his gaze. However, as he saw where the blood mist was gathering, a grave expression overtook his face. The direction of the blood mist's flow coincided exactly with the end of his own spiritual path. The central control of the dragon web was at the very tip of the dragon pillar. Whoosh! The gathering of the blood mist was completed in the following dozen breaths. Within the now empty dragon space, the figures of all the dragons had vanished. All that remained was a desolate land and a spiritual path leading to the dragon pillar. Lin Dong stood on the spiritual path, gazing at the point where all the blood mist had converged. He had not expected that the final challenge he would face would be this person. At the end of the dragon pillar stood a young man in a green dragon robe. His appearance was handsome, and two wooden gourds with dragon patterns swayed gently at his waist. The young man exuded a sense of freedom and detachment, as if he cared for nothing at all. Standing at the end of the spiritual path was none other than the #1 genius of the true dragon clan in thousands of years, Long Luzi. Congratulations, you are the second person in all these years to reach this step in the true dragon clan. Long Luzi looked at Lin Dong, who stood at the end of the spiritual path. Then, a calm voice echoed through the world. If you want to obtain the fortune of the ancestors, you must take 3 of my strikes. When Long Luzi's clear and firm voice echoed through the heavens and earth, Lin Dong, who was far in the distance, immediately became solemn. In the past, only one person has reached this point, and most geniuses never made it this far. Some didn't even pass the trials you just went through, Long Luzi said, looking at Lin Dong from afar. Long Luzi was truly a heavenly supreme powerhouse, and under such a test, it was clear he wouldn't hold back much. Therefore, being able to endure 3 of his moves was unlikely, In fact, just one move might be enough to cripple Lin Dong in his current state. This situation was reminiscent of when Lin Dong faced Thunder Emperor's cave in the heavenly mystic dimension. Back then, with only the great completion of life mystique stage, he had to endure 3 moves from Mo Luo at the revolution stage in order to obtain the Thunder Ancestral Talisman. However, the current situation was not comparable. Lin Dong no longer had the powerful means he had when he had the Ancestral Stone, and his present condition was only about 1/5 of his usual strength. This was an almost impossible test. After a bitter smile, Lin Dong still took a step forward. His words, which seemed calm but were filled with determination, resonated through the air towards the front. I accept this final test. Though his words seemed plain, they carried an unshakable resolve. The gravity of what he said was something only he truly understood. Upon hearing these words, Long Luzi, atop the dragon pillar in the distance, narrowed his eyes slightly. Yet, Long Luzi held no contempt for Lin Dong. He didn't think Lin Dong's decision was unwise. In fact, Long Luzi felt a sense of respect. As soon as Lin Dong made his decision, an overwhelming, crushing aura erupted from within Long Luzi, one so immense that it seemed to threaten to crush the entire dragon space. Boom! The terrifying aura enveloped the entire dragon space, causing the earth and all of the space around it to tremble violently. Under the pressure of this aura, the ground within tens of thousands of miles around the dragon pillar sank by dozens of feet. This was the power of Long Luzi. I respect your choice, and to show the utmost respect, I will hold nothing back. The terrifying aura emanating from Long Luzi's body was like an invisible mountain, pressing down on every inch of the dragon space. As this indescribable pressure descended on Lin Dong, the space around him began to collapse. If it weren't for the support of the spiritual energy path, Lin Dong might have already been crushed into the ground. This was the strongest opponent Lin Dong had ever faced. Compared to the heavenly emperor of the extraterritorial clan he encountered in the sacred drum relic, Long Luzi was even stronger. In fact, Long Luzi's power was on par with the primordial ancestor of the Ice Spirit clan, Bing Tsangqiang. Bing Tsangqiang was Ice Huan's great-grandfather, and a formidable obstacle in Lin Dong's path. Now, Lin Dong faced another obstacle of the same caliber in Long Luzi. Are you ready? When the terrifying aura descended, Long Luzi's voice once again echoed through the heavens, shaking the universe. Upon hearing this voice, Lin Dong's expression grew heavy. He smiled bitterly once more. He knew the power he was about to face was something he could not resist. In the face of such overwhelming strength, any preparation was essentially futile. Bring it on. His voice was low, and at the same time, the spiritual energy within him, now only a fifth of its full potential, was fully mobilized. As he activated all his power, 8 ancestral talismans flew out from his body. Swish, swish, swish. The 8 ancestral talismans flew from Lin Dong's body, spreading above him to form 8 colossal barriers, each tens of thousands of feet in size. The outermost barrier was formed by the Space Ancestral Talisman, followed by the Darkness Ancestral Talisman, and then the Primordial Ancestral Talisman, Thunder Ancestral Talisman, Flame Ancestral Talisman, Ice Ancestral Talisman, Life and Death Ancestral Talisman, and finally the Devouring Ancestral Talisman. The 8 ancestral talismans created 8 layers of barriers, each separated by tens of thousands of feet, giving the impression of an impenetrable fortress. As Lin Dong mobilized all his strength and formed these barriers with the 8 ancestral talismans, Long Luzi, in the distance atop the dragon pillar, began to launch his first attack. Boom! A vast ocean of spiritual energy poured out from Long Luzi's body, forming a massive sea of energy behind him that covered nearly half of the dragon space. Normally, the Supreme Sea was a power used by those below the Heavenly Supreme, but a Heavenly Supreme could directly manipulate and absorb the world's spiritual energy, bypassing the refining process. However, due to being in this unique dragon space, both Long Luzi and Lin Dong are subject to great restrictions from the surrounding heavens and earth. If they were to draw power from this realm, that power would not only fail to defeat Lin Dong, but even a higher Earth Supreme would struggle to inflict serious damage. Therefore, The power that Long Luzi is currently channeling is the strength he brought with him from the outside world. Although it is far less formidable than drawing upon the vast spiritual energy of this realm, it is still enough to make any power below the heavenly supreme level tremble in fear. This is still power beyond what Lin Dong can withstand at this moment. Rumble. The vast sea of spiritual energy that covers most of the dragon space begins to churn. Under Long Luzi's command, it compresses and condenses rapidly. The entire sea of spiritual energy is being compressed and gathered, demonstrating the terrifying power of a heavenly supreme. It is clear that Long Luzi is not holding back. After several thousand miles of spiritual energy have been compressed for just over 10 breaths, only a portion of the vast sea remains, shrinking to less than 10,000 zhang. The shape it takes resembles a massive dragon's claw that seems to cover the sky. However, this condensed dragon claw is not yet Long Luzi's intended attack. If it were only this, it would not be an effort worthy of his full strength. Therefore, after the dragon claw takes shape, Long Luzi bites his finger, and dark golden blood begins to flow from the wound. As the dark golden blood drips from Long Luzi's hand, an extraordinary sight occurs. Each drop of blood begins to condense in the air into a dark golden dragon seal, about the size of a palm. Roar. As Long Luzi forms the dark golden dragon seal, a mighty dragon's roar, filled with the majesty of the heavens and earth, rings through the skies. Then, with a snap of his fingers, the dragon seal, infused with his blood essence, shoots into the massive dragon claw behind him. The addition of the dragon seal acts as a catalyst, causing the already compressed dragon claw to shrink even further. After the massive form of over 10,000 zhang compresses to several thousand zhang, it is then further compressed to 10,000 zhang. The compression doesn't stop there. Once it reaches only 10,000 zhang, the dragon claw is compressed to less than 1,000 zhang. At this moment, the dragon claw, now about 1,000 zhang in size, is pitch black due to the immense energy density, and the terrifying devouring force emanating from it warps the space, resembling a black hole. Buzz. The dragon claw, which now only measures several hundred zhang, exudes a terrifying aura that makes even ordinary, heavenly supreme experts shudder. This move is a technique from the Dragon Codex, the most sacred art of the true Dragon Clan and true Phoenix Clan, two ancient lineages. The Dragon Codex is a divine scripture left behind after the fall of the ancient dragon and Phoenix god emperors. It is considered on par with the primordial divine codex of the primordial divine clan. Within the true dragon and true Phoenix clans, only the top 3 of the younger generation are qualified to learn it. Long Luzi is clearly among that elite group. Dragon Codex, Devouring Dragon Claw. The calm voice of Long Luzi finally rings out. The dark dragon claw, now fully formed, sweeps across the sky, roaring toward Lin Dong, who is waiting with 8 barriers already activated. The several hundred zhang devouring dragon claw flies through the sky. While its speed is not astonishing, and it doesn't shake the heavens and earth, its passing is calm. Yet, the terrifying fluctuations it carries are enough to destroy this dragon space. Buzz. As the dark dragon claw approaches Lin Dong, it begins to slowly shrink. With every contraction, the devouring aura it emits intensifies. The distance between Lin Dong and the devouring dragon claw has now narrowed to a few 100,000 zhang. At this point, the claw has already shrunk to less than 200 zhang. As the claw enters the 10,000 zhang range around Lin Dong, it shrinks further to less than 100 zhang. Buzz. The devouring dragon claw and Lin Dong are closing in, and from a distance, it now appears like a black hole. Lin Dong, still several 100,000 zhang away, fixates on the black mark in the sky that distorts the light of the world. Lin Dong no longer dares to imagine the terrifying power behind this strike. He knows that no matter what, he must block it. The first barrier the claw encounters is the space ancestral talisman. When the distance between the two is reduced to less than 1,000 zhang, Lin Dong fully activates the space ancestral talisman. As Lin Dong exerted all his strength to activate the spatial ancestral talisman, a brilliant silver light erupted from it. The enormous talisman, extending for tens of thousands of feet, rapidly began to twist, transforming in an instant into a colossal spherical spatial prison of several thousand feet in diameter. The spatial prison was formed by the spatial ancestral talisman itself, covered with countless intricate spatial patterns. Within it was trapped the massive, 100-foot-wide devouring dragon palm. After trapping the devouring dragon palm, the silver light on the spatial prison burst forth even more brightly. Under this dazzling light, the surrounding space began to twist rapidly. Clearly, Lin Dong intended to use the spatial ancestral talisman to transfer the devouring dragon palm to another location. However, just as the spatial ancestral talisman was about to relocate the devouring dragon palm, the silver light from the spatial prison suddenly weakened. Then, a terrifying devouring force emanated from inside the prison, causing the space around the spatial ancestral talisman to freeze. All the spatial energy within this range was instantly sucked away. With all the spatial energy drained, the spatial ancestral talisman lost the power to maintain its form and fell from midair. Lin Dong's expression changed dramatically upon witnessing this. He could feel that at the same moment the spatial ancestral talisman lost all its energy, the power of the devouring dragon palm had expanded. Lin Dong never expected that Long Luzi's move would absorb the opponent's energy while growing even stronger. If this continued, all the defenses Lin Dong had built would simply be food for the devouring dragon palm's energy. Return. Realizing the terrifying truth, Lin Dong hurriedly activated the remaining 7 ancestral talismans, attempting to draw them back into his body. Just as he was doing so, the devouring dragon palm had already reached the dark ancestral talisman, and its devouring force drained all of the dark ancestral talisman's power. At the same time, the devouring dragon palm's strength grew once more. Swish, swish, swish. Under Lin Dong's command, the devouring ancestral talisman, life and death ancestral talisman, ice ancestral talisman, flame ancestral talisman, and thunder ancestral talisman rapidly sped back into Lin Dong's body. However, the primordial ancestral talisman, being slightly slower, was locked onto by the devouring force of the devouring dragon palm and had all its power torn away. This was the terrifying aspect of the Dragon Codex, a black hole attack that automatically devours surrounding power and grows stronger. It could neither be defended against nor resisted. To break such an attack required strength that could instantly burst the black hole, a level of power at least 10 times stronger than the black hole itself. About 10 years ago, when Long Luzi had just entered the Heavenly Supreme Realm, he used this very move to defeat a Heavenly Supreme from the 10,000 Pill continent. That Heavenly Supreme was Tai Ping, a direct disciple of the Sacred Flame from the primordial sacred domain. Damn! Within just a few breaths, Lin Dong had lost 3 ancestral talismans, and he cursed furiously. But before his curse could fade, a terrifying shadow arrived several thousand feet away from him. It was the devouring dragon palm, now empowered by the spatial ancestral talisman, dark ancestral talisman, and primordial ancestral talisman. The rapidly approaching devouring dragon palm emitted a deep, buzzing sound from several thousand feet away, followed by an overwhelming devouring force that locked onto Lin Dong. Lin Dong, under its pull, felt his body teetering on the edge of destruction, with less than 1/5 of his internal energy remaining. Clearly, the devouring dragon palm intended to devour Lin Dong as energy food. Lin Dong's face twisted under the force, a terrifying, savage expression appearing as the devouring power tore at him. Only now did Lin Dong truly comprehend how unstoppable this attack was. Even the slightest leak of this power could obliterate him. But Lin Dong, despite the danger, was unwilling to give in. He wanted to grow stronger. He needed more power. Meanwhile, far off on the dragon pillar, Long Luzi's eyes narrowed. Watching Lin Dong, who was being devoured by the devouring dragon palm, his hand slowly rose. Long Luzi understood the sheer terror of his attack. If Lin Dong's life were in danger, he would immediately step in and call off the devouring dragon palm. The frantic roar came from Lin Dong before the devouring heavenly dragon palm, and at this moment, the distance between Lin Dong and the devouring heavenly dragon palm was only a few hundred zhang. Within this range, the force emitted by the palm was enough to tear apart a high-ranking Earth Supreme expert. However, what surprised Long Luzi was that Lin Dong, who was locked in this range, actually did something utterly unbelievable. With his body already distorted by the devouring force, Lin Dong, in his final moments, actually gathered all of his remaining strength into his hands. The point where Lin Dong's palms met was the indestructible spiritual energy path beneath his feet. "Don't look at me, Ayahawk." Lin Dong, having poured out his last bit of strength, roared frantically, and at the very moment he made his final bet, the force within his palms erupted. It was the power of the devouring ancestral talisman. Boom, boom. The force of the devouring ancestral talisman erupted from Lin Dong's hands, spreading across the spiritual energy path around him, and then Lin Dong's palms surged upward. Buzz. As Lin Dong's hands lifted, the terrifying devouring force coming from ahead directly consumed his devouring ancestral talisman. This was the first time the devouring ancestral talisman had completely failed in a direct clash with devouring power. But Lin Dong had achieved what he set out to do, because at this moment, the entire spiritual energy path, stretching tens of thousands of miles, was forcibly lifted from the ground by Lin Dong and hurled toward the devouring heavenly dragon palm ahead. Boom, boom. As the spiritual energy path was thrown, Lin Dong's sacrifice was not just the devouring ancestral talisman, for his arms, unable to withstand the force, exploded into a mist of blood. What Lin Dong did was reckless and desperate, and when Long Luzi, watching from a distance, saw Lin Dong violently lift the spiritual energy path, his expression suddenly changed. This was because the indestructible spiritual energy path was created from Long Luzi's own spiritual energy, and the devouring heavenly dragon palm was also the peak of Long Luzi's mastery over spiritual energy.